Start with some tehillim. We'll start with kuf lamed. We did kuf kapal yesterday, so we'll do kuf lamed. Then I'm going to sit today if that's okay. Sure. Even if it's not. Shiur balos imamakim korasicha Adonai shema b'koli tiyena oznecha kashuvos l'kol tach Adonai. Im abonos tishmaya Adonai niya'amod ki im chasicha l'man tivarei. Tivisi Adonai kivsa nafshi l'idro choti nafshi Adonai mishomrim laboker Yachel Yisrael el Adonai kiva Adonai chesed ramevo kedus Uhu yifteh es Yisrael mikol avonosa. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we are in the middle of the 12th bracha, V'lam al shinim. V'lam al shinim. Remember that first three, last three, always the same, whether you're doing Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur or a Tuesday Mincha. First three, last three are always the same. It's the middle that's different. So here it's the middle 13. We're about halfway done the middle 13. A little more than halfway done the middle 13, which will get us to the last three. That is V'lam al shinim. So V'lam al shinim, as we mentioned last week, is one of only two brachot that start with the letter Vav. Now V'lam al shinim, Vav is usually the letter Chibor, right? It's the connection, as in it's almost like a run-on sentence. It's connected to the previous bracha. So we mentioned last week, we have to bring everyone back to Eretz Yisrael with Tekah b'shofar gadol. Then we establish a just and fair community with Hashiva Shoftenu, and now we need to get rid of the evildoers. V'lam al shinim. Okay, Kol risha krega toved, all wickedness should immediately be erased. We say, okay, mentioned that last week, that the whole bracha is about against the minim. Min means kind, like the arba minim that we have on Sukkot, different kinds of Jews, as unfortunately, and we discussed that as well. Okay, that's one reason why V'lam al shinim, we mentioned last week, starts with a vav. Another possibility, it's likely, and we'll see this by Yerushalayim a little bit also, but it's likely that there were preceding words that were censored. If there was a bracha that was definitely censored, almost definitely censored, it was probably V'lam al shinim, which makes sense. Our enemies, the non-Jews took offense to this bracha pretty heavily. And so this, if there was a bracha that was censored, it makes sense it's V'lam al shinim, and then added the fact that it starts with a vav, which usually brachot don't do. We'll get to why Yerushalayim does. So probably was censored and probably changed many times. I saw Rabbi David Tzvi Hoffman in Al Tefilah says it most likely started Lashmudim V'lam al shinim. Lashmudim Mishumad is an apostate. Okay, so Lashmudim V'lam al shinim is probably the way it was started. Which makes sense grammatically, right? Lashmudim V'lam al shinim. Starting a bracha with vav is a little confusing dictic-wise.
But they could have taken off the vowels.
It's true. Yeah, it's very possible. It just makes sense that if we had to pick one bracha that was probably censored, V'lam al shinim was the offensive one in that respect. Well, you could see, right?
Having the vav there makes you think of what was missing.
Correct.
So it's good to keep it there.
Correct.
Little reminder.
Correct. I like that. Yeah, it makes you appreciate that the bracha was even greater. It's Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky told my rabbi. So he told him that when he went to Slobodka, Victor Miller, Rabbi Yaakov. Victor Miller definitely went to Slobodka. Victor Miller went to Slobodka in 1937. Can you imagine? You think your kids asking you to go to yeshiva in Israel was difficult. He was a Johns Hopkins grad from Baltimore, Maryland, and he wanted to go learn in the greatest yeshiva in the world, Slobodka Yeshiva, in 1937. Can you imagine? Imagine that conversation. But he did. He did not come home for Pesach. That is true. But he did come home. Baruch Hashem, they got him out in 39. But in any event, so he said, not out of anivus, not out of humility. He said it wasn't even close. They were numbers 390. They were two of the Gedolim, two of the greatest rabbis who survived Europe, came here, led American Jewry, of course, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Kamenetsky, and in the early to mid, and then eventually mid 20th century. So he said it wasn't an exaggeration, it wasn't humility. They were like Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky and Rabbi Victor Miller were numbers 399 and 400. And it wasn't they're being humble or, they're trying to, they were the young newer Bachrim, but also just shows us what we lost in Europe, among many things, of course. One of the things we lost. So same a year, maybe we've lost part of the bracha. It's a little, and it reminds us. I like that. It reminds us of what we did lose. Okay.
What about the sechazena? That's a vav, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's not the beginning of the bracha.
Oh, you
Yeah.
go back up to it say.
Correct. So we'll see. Yeah, good point. But V'sech Hazena is not the this is the beginning of bracha Vili Yerushalayim, and here V'lam Al Shinim. It seems like Vav means it's like a comma. Right? It doesn't make sense to put a comma at the beginning of a sentence. It almost seems like something is off. We'll get to Vili Yerushalayim, but V'lam Al Shinim, it's very possible that it was censored. More likely. Okay. So some versions have it written as V'chol Osei Risha Karega Yovedu, that the evildoers shall be destroyed. Our version is not like that. V'chol harisha karega toved, that all risha, all wickedness, should immediately be erased. Okay, so what's the difference? Very big difference. Fundamental difference in really Judaism's understanding of a lot of things here. The first version asks that evil human beings should be destroyed, which is fair, especially with what's going on in the world. While the second version, which is our version, by the way, asks that evil itself be destroyed. Meaning, what do you want more? You want the person to be destroyed, or do you want the evil behind the person? Well, if the evil behind the person is destroyed, then we don't have our enemies anyway. So either way, that seems like a better idea. But it's actually a fascinating This is a proof to a fascinating machlokas that we paskin like Bruria. Bruria is not just the name of a high school in New Jersey. One of the most important women of all time, and definitely one of the, if not the most important woman in Talmudic times. She's the wife of Rabbi Meir, and she argued with Rabbi Meir. There was a machlokas, and she argued, and we follow Bruria. This is what happens. The Gemara Brachos says, many people in Rabbi Meir's neighborhood, it's a fascinating machlokas, were causing him great distress. They were really messing with him. Okay, it wasn't, like rabbi and congregants can get on their nerves a little bit, but this was bad. This was really, really bad. Whatever it was. So what did he do? Havekabai Rabbi Meir Rachmei Loi Kihechi Musu. He davened that Hashem take them from the world. That was his tefilah, to get rid of them. His wife, Bruria, said, you're wrong. Right? The pasuk in Tehillim says, in Kuf Daled, Yitamu Chataim. What does it say? The sins shall disappear. The Chataim, not the Chotim, not the sinner, the sin. So what should he do? Bruria told him, Elabai Rachmei Loi Hadri B'tshuva. Daven that they do tshuva. Daven, stop bothering you. But daven, and that's exactly what happened. Believe it or not, that's what happened. But we see from this Gemara Brachos and Daf Yud that we paskin like Bruria over Rabbi Meir, and our version that we say every day, 3 times a day, follows Bruria's psak, the chol harisha, that we daven for the chataim, the sins, not the sinners, to be removed, not the chotim, not the sinners. Okay. You'd think, especially today, that we need Hashem to take away our enemies. But interestingly enough, it would appear from our tefilah that we're not supposed to ask Hashem to punish human beings. We're not supposed to ask Hashem to take away people from this world. In fact, we see this by Kriyas Yamsuf, right? They told that Hashem wasn't thrilled. He would have rather had the Mitzrim do tshuva. That didn't happen for many reasons. And we had to kind of, he had to come down hard on them, etc., as we know the end of the story. But ultimately, that it's the same idea here, where we have this concept where we're not supposed to daven for people to die. We're supposed to daven for them to stop messing with us. That's for sure. I know it sounds like a very left-wing attitude, but it's true. That's our tefilah. By us saying b'chol harisha, we just want the wicked to go away, not the wicked people. Yeah.
No, it's exactly the same. We know there'll be others
Correct.
Following them. So if the wickedness goes away,
It's true.
there won't be others.
It's true. It's pretty much our history in a nutshell, an exile in a nutshell. It's just, there's always a group of people, there always, unfortunately, will be throughout our exile, and that's true. So it makes more sense, you could daven for the chotim, the sinners, but there's just going to be another chotem, it's just going to be someone else years down the line. So, interesting. But she tells us, Yitamu Chataim, based on the pasuk in Tehillim, daven that the sins are removed, not the sinners. Makes more sense if you think about it. Like practical, makes sense. Okay, so that was Bilam al Shinim. That's a fascinating bracha. It's the last one that got us to 19, even though it wasn't added at the end, which is interesting. I always thought that was interesting that we have 18 brachot, and then we added one, but we didn't add it to the end, because the end is kind of set, as we're going to see. The beginning is definitely set, right? We have Shevach, then we have Hodah at the end, praise, thanking Hashem, that's kind of set. So the middle is where there's wiggle room, for lack of better terminology. Okay. Then we have the 13th bracha. We're up to Al HaTzadikim. Okay, so we ask Hashem to remove our enemies. Well, now we need to ask Him to have mercy on the righteous. Right? It's all a flow. I don't know if we thought about it before we came together, but it's all a flow. It all connects one bracha to the other. Right? So you remove our enemies, good. Now we have to have mercy on the righteous. We need good leaders. We use many terms in this bracha that are similar, but each one has a different nuance. So for example, Al tzadikim v'al chasidim. What's the difference? Righteous and pious, right? Tzaddik fulfills the commandments properly. That's what a tzaddik or a tzaddikus is. Someone who is meticulous in their performance of mitzvos. That's all it is, right? It's not, long beard or, sorry to say. Now I'm just saying that because I don't have a long beard. No, but, it's someone who a tzaddik means b'mitzvos. Someone who is very meticulous in performance of mitzvos. That's it. A chassid is not, someone with long socks or whatever. That's something else. But a chassid means someone who goes beyond what's required by the law. L'fnei mishur satir. That's the difference between a tzaddik and a chassid. Interesting nuance, a little different nuance there. What about the ziknei amcha beis Yisrael? So those are the members of the Sanhedrin. While the pleitas sofrehem, the remnant of the teachers, that refers to those who are organized and categorized the laws, Talmudic scholars that we quote all the time. So that's what we're referring to when we say the pleitas sofrei. Okay, it's interesting. The previous bracha of La Malshinim, we had to reject people. We had to, unfortunately, be pretty picky in our selective process, and we had to go through and say, I'm sorry, this person's not going to work. We had to get rid of people. So in this bracha, we mentioned the Gerei Tzedek. We mentioned the righteous converts to show that, hey, we do open our hearts to righteous converts. We're not exactly, an evangelical group here where we're going door to door, encouraging people to join the team. That's not necessarily what we do. Even Chabad, they'll go door to door, but they're not encouraging people to join Judaism. That's not the Lubavitcher Rebbe's mantra, was just based off showing the light to all people, Jew, non-Jew alike, and doing some Noachite laws or whatever it may have been. But we don't really believe in that so much. If someone comes to convert, then we can see how serious they are. And I used to get more in Mount Vernon than here. I used to get calls probably like once a month, I would say, multiple times throughout the year. I would get phone calls, and I would, people who wanted to convert. It's the same email. I have a burning desire to join Judaism. And it's always like, well, call me in 2 months. But I don't know if I want to be a Jew by then. Okay. Yeah, no, that's, sorry? Yeah, that's what they always said. That's how they started the email. A burning desire to join the Jewish faith. I had a passion, a dream, I don't know. Usually what happened. Never hear from them again. More often than not. There were people who, we did have, Baruch Hashem, a few people who went through with their conversion, but those people never started their emails with I have a burning desire to join the Jewish people. Just saying. The people who did were people who just, were interested in Judaism and then saw it through. So we even though we rejected people in Bla Malshinim, we have the Gerei Tzedek to show that we do open our hearts to the right people, to Gerei Tzedek, to the righteous converts. After we ask for Hashem's mercy, Yehemu Rachamecha, we ask for Hashem to grant that our lot should always be with them. V'sim chalkeinu imahem li'olam. Like, we're really trying to be inclusive here. We're really trying to, include them, and we should benefit from their spiritual greatness. How inspiring! I always tell people I have friends who converted or became Balei Tshuva. It's I didn't get to choose this. You got to choose this. You're it's a holier endeavor to have this as an opportunity to you had the choice. I didn't have a choice to be Jewish. I was born into a Jewish family, and so Simcha Kinei Mayim La'alam, we should benefit from their spirituality, from their spiritual greatness of what they bring to the table. I think it's an incredible way of looking at Gerei Tzedek. Okay.
Could you go back to Hasidim?
Yes.
Where is the line between you going beyond and you going too far beyond?
Okay, it's a good question. Yeah, so the tzaddikim b'chasidim. So tzaddik just means, or tzaddikas just means someone who cares a lot about mitzvos. a chassid will take that mitzvah and will, even though he or she is exempt. So the thing that comes to mind, an esrog, or they don't have any esrogim in their European town. So the guy goes and he goes, to the next town over, spends half his money, whatever it is. It goes way above you're putter, you're exempt. You don't have to do it. I know people who, they're far away from a minyan, but they'll drive miles and miles, whatever it is, for whatever reason. They'll drive miles and miles to go to a minyan. They're exempt, most probably. They're far away, but they feel that it's important to them. It's not like avodah zarah. Sometimes I feel like people are like obsessed with it, like it overrides all important things in their lives. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about someone who it's not harming anyone else, because I deal with that in couples counseling also, where someone will, their chumras should not come as a result of their spouse or whatnot. You can, one of my rebbeim always said, I wait Rabbeinu Tam, but never when I'm with anyone in my family. So I always like that. It's true, because it affects my wife. My wife can't get whatever. But if I'm by myself, or if I'm at shul, I wait Rabbeinu Tam. My wife doesn't. She's already getting, that's my chumrah is not affecting anyone negatively. So I think that's important as well. Yes.
How about what you were saying before with the converts and everything? There are some Jews who are not in favor of the converts and everything, and I don't understand, like, in this prayer, how
Well, most Jews are in favor of converts. So the good Jews. There are a lot of bad Jews out there in the
So
world.
with the Syrian community, they have a sign in the shul. They don't accept converts. You literally have I have in my phone picture.
Syrian it's more of a, Syrian and Persian. Persian's a little different, but yeah, it's a little different of a world. But I don't know. I know that for the right person, we qualitatively, obviously, we accept Gary Tzedek, and that's part of our Shemona Esrei. It's an important part of our Shemona Esrei that we accept the Gary Tzedek. I think it's very important.
We don't necessarily know who's a ger. We shouldn't know. It's not a...
Yeah, it's not our business. Yeah. Sometimes it's obvious. It's pretty. I have one of my close friends is 6'2" and African American. I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
He's a convert. But I don't know. Sometimes he said he's been asked if he's Ethiopian before. He doesn't take offense to that. Says he takes more offense to being called African American because he's 7th generation American and his family hasn't been to Africa in hundreds of years. But nonetheless. I think it's fair. But you're right. Yeah, I don't think... I have a very close family friend in Israel. She converted. You would never know. A million years. You would never know. She's running all these organizations and from-looking woman, and, you would never know in a million years that
But
she...
no one's going to walk over to either one and say, were you born into this or are you a
Yeah, but I don't think it's something... It's
You're
only...
supposed to.
I've spoken to people who've converted. It's also not something to hide. It's not something you should be ashamed of. In my personal opinion, I don't think you should be. She grew up Kristen Kindle, is her name, right? So I don't think that's something that you should necessarily hide. I don't know if you want to put a sign on your saying that you converted. I don't think you have to, but I don't want anyone to think like it's something embarrassing. I don't think that's. I think that's important as well. Yeah, I hear both sides. I think that ultimately. It's kind of like, you should be proud, and I think it's a personal choice. Some of my friends who've converted, I can see clearly, they want everyone, especially before they get married. So the women I know who get, because then they don't change their last name. So they got like a really, I know one woman who converted, she has a very Italian last name. Very, very secular, like there's no way. And so I think she kind of tells people right away, oh, by the way, I converted. It's very, very clear. Doesn't matter what her name is, and then she got married, Baruch Hashem. So now she, takes her husband's name, and that's it. She doesn't. Now it's less obvious. She doesn't, necessarily look. Happens to be an Italian Catholic, coming from an Italian Catholic family, but she doesn't necessarily look Italian Catholic. But I think it depends. I think it's personal choice. But I don't think they should be embarrassed. Just the opposite. We say the Gerei Tzedek are a huge part of our community, and we should look to them with great respect. Okay. All right. So now we're up to we finished the 13th bracha. I want to do the 14th and the 15th together. V'liyushalayim and et tzamach David. Okay, so the reason why we're doing this together is because it was originally one bracha, interestingly enough. Rabbi David Tzvi Hoffman, Al Tefilah, says that many scholars believe that at the least for the Jews of Eretz Yisrael, V'liyushalayim and et tzamach David, believe it or not, were originally one bracha. And it ended with the words, Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokei David, Ubonei Yerushalayim. Combine both brachos. This would also explain why even after V'la Malshinim was added, something we talked about, I guess, months ago at this point, last year, they kept the name Shmona Esrei, because there used to be 17 brachos, at least for Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, it seems like they always split these brachos up, historically. And V'la Malshinim made it into 18. Now, we split them up, and we have V'la Malshinim, it got us to 19. But nonetheless. So how do we know this? So you'll know, some Siddurim actually have this, although that one does not, I don't think. They have what's called the Krovetz Lipurim. That's like a, Krovetz, it's like a poem that they used to say on Chazaras Hashatz, for the repetition of Shmona Esrei, on Purim morning. It was written by Rabbi Elazar HaKalir, wrote a lot of the kinos that we discuss on Tisha B'Av. Probably lived in Israel around 600 years after the Churban Bayis Sheni, the destruction of the Second Temple. And for the poem, he includes a special verse for each bracha of Shmona Esrei, and he conveniently left one out for the bracha of Et Tzamach David. Now, could that be, coincident? It could be. It could be he didn't like that bracha, or he ran out of things to say. He only had 18 stanzas, not 19. I don't know. But many suggest there never was a separate bracha in Eretz Yisrael. This is again where Rabbi Elazar HaKalir was living. There never was a separate bracha, and V'liyushalayim and Et Tzamach David were said as one. Interestingly enough, that also might be why V'liyushalayim starts with a vav. Same idea as what we had said with V'la Malshinim. It was probably one bracha that started with Et Tzamach David and then continued with V'liyushalayim. So that makes sense. The vav is continuing. It's like the comma. It's adding on to the bracha. So that would make two differences to today. Well, the way we see V'liyushalayim and Et Tzamach David, two differences today. Number one, we say, first of all, V'liyushalayim before Et Tzamach David, right? So originally, apparently, it was Et Tzamach David, and then it continued in V'liyushalayim as like the continuation. So first of all, we switch those around, because we say V'liyushalayim, and then we say Et Tzamach David. Then we go into Shema Kolenu, and of course we say the brachos separately, right? We don't have these brachos together. Okay, that's because.
Why do we switch it though?
Sorry.
Why do we switch it?
So it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know why at some point we went ahead and just. You're saying switching the order, or just?
Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine it just made more grammatical sense. I don't know.
Well, not if they love the vav.
Right, and that's why it's almost like we said before. Like the vav is like reminding us of like the history behind it. Right? Seems like that. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know why they switched it up, and why Et Tzamach. I mean, I'm thinking about what Et Tzamach David does and what V'liyushalayim does, but
Could it be because it's related to Ahat Tzadikim?
so we want Ala Tzadikim to be next to.
I want this to be a continuation of Ahat Tzadikim.
Interesting. So then it goes Ala Tzadikim, then we want to say V'liyushalayim. Yeah, it could be the Tzadikim of Yerushalayim, maybe. Yeah, interesting.
Maybe also because they were in Yerushalayim, so that wasn't first on their mind.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's good too. They're already in Yerushalayim, so they're not thinking of making a bracha. That's their home, right? That's true. They're not thinking, we need to make a bracha on Yerushalayim. That's not what that's just obvious to them. I like that. Never thought of that. Yeah. So that's one difference. We switch around the order, and we of course say the brachos separately. We separate. We definitely do that.
You know who did that?
I'm sorry?
Who authorized doing that?
Right, so it's got to be in the last 1,000 years, but that doesn't have to be more than 1,000 years. We're talking way before, the time of Gaonim was until like 900, definitely, probably even before.
Right. It's not like a recent.
Yeah, no. I don't, because we're talking about if we're living, if Rabbi Elazar HaKalir, it had to be around that time, right? So he's living 600 years after the Churban. So let's just pretend, for lack of, around the year 600-ish, whatever that may mean. So if that's the case, so if that's about 1,500 years ago, right, give or take. So we're talking 1,500 years ago, and if that's when they're potentially making changes, it makes sense. Maybe a little before that, because if he's a little bit after that, because if he's still assuming that he left it out on purpose and not because he just didn't like the bracha of Etzamach David. But no, he left it out because there was no individual bracha of Etzamach David. We see this by Nitzavim and Vayilech, by the way, the Parshios, right? Gan Parshios, there are 53 Parshios, so there's 52. Except that, it's interesting, but Nitzavim and Vayilech were always one Parsha. There was never, we separated them recently, but recently might be probably around a few hundred, a couple thousand, yeah, maybe 1,500. Anywhere from 1,200 to 1,800 years ago.
And it could set a dangerous precedent that people can change around.
For sure, for sure. Okay.
The footnotes in Connie agrees with me.
Agrees with you. What does it
Yes.
say?
It says, and okay, after having sought God's blessings on Israel's leaders and righteous people, we seek His blessing for the holy city. No blessing is complete until the seed of holiness, Yerushalayim, is revealed.
I like that.
It's granted.
So
it's kind of like what I
we
said.
have the righteous, then we go into, we're like the righteous of Yerushalayim, like we're going on. Righteous people, now we're talking about the righteous place. I like the transition, yeah. It's a nice nice flow of like, I don't know, for me personally, just researching this has allowed me, I've noticed my Shemona Esrei has just understood and appreciated the flow much better. Since I started researching these topics, just because I never really thought of it as 19 brachos, that were connected-ish. I understood the concept of the first 3, last 3, middle 13, but in the middle 13, there's really a beautiful flow throughout each of the brachos that kind of takes us to the next bracha. Okay, so the minhag in Bavel, they always said Yerushalayim Etzamach David as 2 separate brachos. So that's for sure. That we have. I guess that's the issue. We think that it was said as one bracha in Yerushalayim. We assume. It's not just a thought. It's not a guess. It's a pretty decent hypothesis. Let's put it that way. But in Bavel, or outside of Yerushalayim, they always said that as 2 separate brachos. So why? Why did Jews in the diaspora always keep this as 2 brachos? So I heard from that Rav Soloveitchik said that they wanted to make their own bracha about Mashiach coming. Etzamach David, think about it, is saying we want Mashiach, we need Mashiach. It's like a plea for keeping our identity even in the diaspora. But you'd think, well, if you're living in Eretz Yisrael, you live in Yerushalayim, you're not as focused. So kind of like what we were saying, where you're in Yerushalayim, but you're not focusing on Yerushalayim, so you're not focusing as much on the Beis Hamikdash, somewhat to that extent. So Etzamach David emphasizes that Mashiach has yet to come, and every day we eagerly look forward to his arrival. Okay, so the Jews living in exile worried, hey, we're not going to make it. We're not going to survive until the Messianic era. So they wanted to carve out a bracha for Yerushalayim, make its own bracha, a second bracha, if you will, the Yerushalayim, which is a tefilah that we should survive to see the great era. So that flows nicely. So Etzamach David, please bring Mashiach. Yerushalayim, we want Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. So that all kind of flows nicely. That's why in these brachos we emphasize that we need strength and stamina to endure the hardships to get us there, take us to the finish line. Right? It's another way of looking at these brachos. We want the hardships of life in exile. So that's another way of looking at it, the Yerushalayim and Etzamach David, in terms of separating them into 2 brachos. Out in Yerushalayim, no, they didn't need to. Right? They're already there. They're already focusing on Yerushalayim. They're thinking about the Beis Hamikdash, eventual Beis Hamikdash. Right? But outside of Yerushalayim, okay, so then let's make our own bracha. Let's focus on Yerushalayim, have a special bracha just for that, and go out of our way, I guess, to focus on Yerushalayim. So, yes.
I'm just looking at it and I'm going, each of these mitzvahs or whatever you want to call it are so short.
I'm sorry.
It's like a staccato. And when you look at different brachos, they're much longer and they go into much more detail. They're like PowerPoints. They look like some
Quick,
PowerPoints.
like 2-line brachos. Yeah, it's like when I teach my students that Shabbos Shemona Esrei has 7 brachos, and Yom Tov has 7, and weekday has 19. But Shabbos, like Rosh Hashanah has 9 brachos, but it's 3 times as long, right? Quality over quantity. Yeah, that's what I always tell people. It's true. That they're really short. They're a couple. That's what people ask me which brachos I should memorize. Try the first 3 and last 3 always start because that's you're having every Shemona Esrei starts and ends with that. But yeah, some of these are really short. The middle ones, I would take them, and that's the Etzamach Davids of the world, of the Shemona Esrei. But okay, I think we could stop here. That actually takes us to Shema Kolenu very nicely. So we'll continue with the 16th bracha today. It's true. And because the shorter brachas, we spent a lot less time on them also. So running